All right, everybody. Welcome to episode number 25 of Sports Cards Live, the quarter century mark. It's been really, wow, did that go by fast? 25th episode. I can barely believe it. So before we get into tonight's show, I want to take a few minutes and I want to thank the past couple of guests. The first one back on June the 27th, episode 23, was Paul Lesko, who is the preeminent legal analyst in the hobby. Paul reviews on Twitter all the cases going on that are sort of within the hobby. Really interesting stuff. You can check out that video. It's on the YouTube channel, Sports Cards Live, and it'll live there forever. So go check that out whenever you have some time if you haven't already seen it. Also want to thank the guests from the last episode, number 24, Chris McGill of House of Jordans and Card Ladder. We had an awesome conversation about everything to do with House of Jordans, his YouTube show, his podcast, and Card Ladder, which is a new valuation and sort of portfolio tracker or card tracker for collectors and investors out there. Coming up next episode on July the 8th, episode 26, my guest will be Adam G. He goes by the Real 27 guy on Instagram, an amazing basketball collector, a true enthusiast. I can't wait to have him on. We're going to have a really chilled out conversation. That'll be coming up on Wednesday. On Saturday, a week today, my guest is Chris Barr. Chris is the manager of, he's the product development manager for basketball cards with Panini. So that's going to be an amazing episode. Chris is going to give us a lot of insight into the production of basketball cards for Panini, the license holder. So you can't get any better than that. And then the show after that, on July the 25th, my guest will be Grant Sandground. He's the director of product development for Upper Deck. So the next few shows, we have a couple of real heavies in the hobby coming on to talk about what it takes to make sets of cards and working in the industry that we are all enthusiasts of. So really looking forward to those ones. Also want to mention I mentioned Chris McGill from House of Jordans. I was fortunate enough on Thursday, just a couple of days ago, to be the guest on his show, Conversations with Chris. If you want to hear that, please check out his channel, House of Jordans, on YouTube. And that episode, I had a blast doing it. It was awesome. Chris is a great host, and check out the content on their channel as usual. If you are new to Sports Cards Live, and I want to thank Shawn for attracting viewers to the channel tonight. So thank you, Shawn, for that, who's in the background watching as I speak, and we'll bring him out in just a minute. But if you're new to the channel, I appreciate you viewing. Hope you want to come back and view more and even go into the library and see some of the old episodes. As I mentioned, this is episode number 25 of Sports Cards Live. I can't even believe it. It feels like it just started, but here we are, quarter century mark. So thank you for viewing. If you don't mind, please consider subscribing to the channel on YouTube. I'd greatly appreciate it. I want to wish all of our viewers in the United States a happy 4th of July, big day. So congratulations. Happy 4th of July, everybody. And finally, before we jump in, I haven't done this for a few episodes, but I want to give everybody a tip. If you collect cards that are graded and you ever have a slab that is scuffed or scratched, and this is just me doing it. I don't even know these people, but this product right here, it's called Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0. This stuff will clean your slabs. So the cardboard nerd that I am wants to share this with people out there. You can buy it on Amazon. It's like $15 for a bottle, and it works wonders. And I know Shawn has a lot of graded cards, so he may want to consider this if he has any that have scuffs. All right, episode 25. We're going to kick it off right now. My guest tonight, many of you know him. A few of you may not. Shawn is widely regarded as, and I love this, I think this is one of the coolest intros I've ever had the pleasure of doing on the show. He is widely regarded as the Wayne Gretzky of Wayne Gretzky collectors. And when I say widely regarded, I mean media outlets have dubbed him as such. This isn't me coming up with it. It's not him coming up with it. This was coined by like CBC and Sportsnet type of media outlet. So very cool stuff. He is also the acquisitions or an acquisitions associate for Classic Auctions, a big hockey memorabilia and card auction house out of Quebec, Canada. So we will be talking about that as well. And of course, we'll be talking all about his collection of Wayne Gretzky memorabilia and his more recent foray into sports cards, the hobby of which he has taken by storm. Let's bring out Shawn Chaulk. Shawn, Welcome to episode number 25 of Sports Cards Live. I'm super, number one, I'm super happy to have my 25th episode, and it's an honor to have you as my guest for this episode. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Absolutely awesome. I've been looking forward to this all week, so I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to people. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've been excited for it too, and we've been communicating back and forth for about a week now, and I know you've got lots of great stories to tell. Your experiences are second to none in the hobby, so we're going to get to all that. Before we jump into some of that, though, I'd like to, if you don't mind explaining, even to the viewers out there, I didn't just cold call you and say, "Hey, Shawn, my name's Jeremy. I do a show." We've sort of been acquaintances through some Facebook groups, but there's kind of one key person that I would say connects us mostly, and that would be a gentleman by the name of Kevin Doty, who's out of Minnesota, who I met basically through Facebook groups, and then we actually had a beer at the National. I remember at 11 a.m. One day back in August, and then he was at the Expo back in November, which you were at as well. Why don't you tell everybody sort of about your friendship with with Kevin, and how you and I came into contact?
Yeah, well, Kevin was one of the, if not the first guy that I talked to about vintage cards and card collecting. I might have even bought my first cards from him or took direction from him for sure. And, getting into the card side of collecting, first thing I did, of course, was join a bunch of Facebook groups and check out the social media things and whatnot, because you've got a network. And he was just from the very get-go one of the most helpful guys, that I could have ever hoped to meet. From the very get-go, he was guiding me and directing me and talking to me about sets and educating me. And any questions I had, he answered them right now and then some. It evolved like it always does in the hobby and in relationships. We just became good friends, I call us, my collecting friends, so to speak. And the relationship just flourished. We talk 2 or 3 times a week now, every week, whether it's a quick text message or a phone call or whatnot. But he's been instrumental in getting me going into cards. And last November, I went to the Toronto show. First time I'd been there in years, at least 15 years. And he kept telling me about this Jeremy Lee guy. I got to meet this Jeremy Lee, he raved about you. And so I knew a lot about you before I ever talked to you through the groups and whatnot. So he's one of your biggest fans as well. So, he kind of made me the off-screen introduction to you, and it went from there.
Well, that's definitely flattering. And it's funny because I knew a lot about you, number one, from hearing about you in the news, but also from Kevin. So I think we have that in common. Okay. We're going to start off by chatting about basically the history of your collecting Wayne Gretzky memorabilia. And then we'll get into how you transition to cards. Because basically, my understanding is that you were a memorabilia collector exclusively. You didn't collect cards, but you jumped in with both feet, and you like a cannonball. You made a big splash. Before we get into that, we're just going to say hello to some of the viewers who are out there with some good evening, see if we have any early comments, and then we'll jump in. Ziggy, as always, is in the house. Ziggy, thank you for viewing, everybody. Ziggy runs a YouTube channel by the same name, Ziggy No, and he does a weekly content review, hobby content review. He's featured Sports Cards Live several times. Be sure to check it out. Jeff knows Ziggy. Austin, good evening. Welcome to the show, as always. Daniel, thank you so much for congratulations on episode 25. I hope there's many more. And by the way, I shipped out your card today. Anonymous Facebook user says, "Hey, Jeremy, if you are watching on Facebook, please go onto StreamYard.com/Facebook, click the big blue button, and that will allow us to see who you are and address you more informally, which would be very nice." Orvie, welcome to the show. Hello. Jason in the house. Good evening again. This might be the greatest episode yet. Greatest in all capitals. Jason, welcome. And I know you're excited for this one. Jeff says, "Jeremy, I know you spoke a lot about previous Jordan purchase, yet did you speak on the amount you paid for them? I might have missed it." Jeff, we're going to focus on Wayne Gretzky tonight, but feel free to send me a message privately. I'm happy to chat with you. Scott, the Quarter Century Club, thank you very much. Very happy to make it to this point in the existence of this show. the personal finance dad, I like to call you the PFD. Good call out on the scratch stuff. I can use some of that. Yes, check that out. It's called Maguire's Scratch X 2.0. This stuff really does work, okay? Really. Now, if you got a crack right through your slab, it's not going to seal a crack, but a light scratch it will, and any scuffs come off very nicely. And I'll also mention the personal finance that has another awesome channel on YouTube. I've been watching more of his videos over the last couple of days. Check them out. Really interesting stuff and a nice analytical approach. Card Investor, welcome to the show. Does he have a bigger collection than Jeffrey? Well, I can tell you, Shawn's collection focuses on memorabilia. Jeffrey is cards. Shawn is now doing cards, but not necessarily just Gretzky. Shawn, you're doing vintage, rookies, Hall of Famer, set registry kind of stuff. Yeah. All right, Peter, welcome to the show. Bruce, of course, his ridiculous tattoo. We got some pictures of that coming. Wayne, who? That's too funny. Bruce says, CJ, Shawn has an unparalleled. Yeah, okay, we know. Lots of big Gretzky collections. Chris McGill from House of Jordan's in the house. Chris, welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. Hey, Xcode, thank you. Terry Fortune, a big Wayne Gretzky rookie card collector in the house. You may know, you guys may even have rubbed shoulders before. Tim Heacock, really looking forward to this episode. Tim, thank you for showing up. Jay, good evening. Earl, a good friend of Shawn's. Welcome to the show, Earl. Welcome to the show. I owe you a private message on other matters. Dave Jones, looking forward to hosting another great episode tonight. Congratulations on your silver. Thank you. Very proud to hit episode number 25 tonight. Shawn, hang tight. We're almost done. Hey, Shawn, Brantford here in the house. There you go. Wayne Gretzky's hometown. Jay Yokish, looking forward, number 25. Jay, thank you for tuning in as always. Eli's in the house. Thank you, Eli. And Name from indigenousrookiecard.com. Check out his very important and interesting website where he celebrates the rookie cards of all the Indigenous players that have ever played in the NHL. And from what I heard from his Instagram live show last week with Ken Reed, he has all of them. So that is pretty awesome. Congratulations, Name. Thank you for tuning in. Al G in the house. Welcome to the show. And Frankie35, welcome to the show. Last one, Teflon Teffy. Have you seen my bronze Gretzky statue on Facebook? And if so, do you have a value? Shawn, why don't you kick it off right there, Shawn? Tell us if you have a value for Teflon Teffy on that. And then please jump in and let's start talking about how you started collecting Wayne Gretzky.
Well, I did see the bronze statue on Facebook this week, but I don't know much more about it than everybody else seems to know. It's a pretty elusive piece. I had heard about it before. I had seen a picture of it before, but I had never seen one, and I don't know until now if you own that one, anybody who owns one. So if you do own the one that you've been asking about, kudos to you. There's an awful lot of people would like to have that in their collection, I'm sure.
Awesome. Okay, and Tim Marin's in the house. Tim, welcome to the show tonight. Andy's in the house. Hey, boys, wish I was there with you next time. I hope. Andy, you can always watch this show on the YouTube channel. Forever after, this show will be there. Anyone, if you're new to Sports Cards Live, please go visit the YouTube channel. And if you would consider it, I'd appreciate your subscription. Thank you very much. Give a thumbs up to the video to let us know that you enjoyed it. All right, Shawn, how did you start collecting Wayne Gretzky? I realize you live in Northern Alberta, close enough to Edmonton. What got you started with buying memorabilia?
Well, I started, I think, in terms of memorabilia back where a lot of people did, and that was collecting autographs. So for many years, that's all I focused on. I really didn't even know there was a game-used memorabilia world out there. I sincerely didn't have a clue you could own a piece of the game that way. I had focused on autographs. I had amassed a huge collection. I think I had 50,000 signed cards at one point from all sports. So I didn't, I didn't have a particular sport. I was just whoever I could find an address for or meet, I was getting a signed card for. And then one day I was in Edmonton and I had some time to waste, and I was walking down the street and there was a pawn shop, and I don't go into pawn shops, but I went in this pawn shop and I started talking to the guy behind the counter, and there were some hockey sticks. And I said, "What's the scoop on the hockey sticks?" And he goes, "Well, that one there was Wayne Presley's Chicago Blackhawk cup of coffee kind of guy. I don't know. I don't even know much about him." But I said, "Oh, like the stick that he actually used?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "We get them in all the time." And I said, can I touch it? So he handed me the stick, and it was like, oh my God, a player used this. And that was my introduction to even knowing that game used memorabilia was a thing. And then I started paying more attention to, auctions and things like that. And I came.
Shawn, when would that have been when you walked into that pawn shop? What year was that? If you
in the 80s. In the late 80s, I'm guessing, yeah. So I came across the opportunity to own a Gretzky stick. Now, I moved to Alberta in 1980 as a 13-year-old. And I came from Eastern Canada, where we got hockey night in Canada, 9:30 on Saturday night, and that was it. So I didn't even get to watch a lot of hockey as a kid because it was past my bedtime. Fast forward to Alberta, where the games come on before you're even eating dinner, and all of a sudden you can be a real hockey fan. So when we got to Alberta, I adopted the Oilers as my team. They were new. And if you were an Oilers fan in the 80s, how could you not focus on Gretzky kind of thing? So he became my go-to guy, my favorite player all along. So fast forward to when I got introduced to game used memorabilia. In an auction, I won a Gretzky stick. And then from that moment on, I decided this is what I'm going to go after. And so began the hunt. And then I think in 2005, the Oilers, through Classic Auction, and Rick the Stick, Chuck, he had this massive collection through working in the dressing rooms. They auctioned off a huge collection, and I bought a couple of pieces, and that's when I really turned the corner of that auction, and I said, this is going to be my thing. And it, like everything I seemed to do, it just got stupid really fast, and I started to accumulate some really good stuff.
So is there a specific piece that you acquired early that is the one that kind of made you kind of think to myself, when you said you started to go hard after you acquired those two pieces, are one of those the ones that made you go hard, or was it the first stick that did that?
I honestly think it was in 2005 when I bought a Gretzky stick. There were 3 or 4 pieces I got in that auction. And that's when I decided that would be my focus. So really, on the grand scheme of things, not long ago, 15 years.
So 15 years ago, you got really into it. And now I believe it's about 2 years ago that you really jumped into cards. What was the impetus for that sort of transition from memorabilia to cards?
Well, I had collected an unbelievable amount of Gretzky stuff. Probably 10 times what I thought I would ever do with it. I had done more things because I had the collection and got to do more things with Gretzky than I dreamed possible. It was almost like I had climbed the mountain and was coming down the other side, and it had reached the peak, and some of the glory with chasing was gone because I had so much stuff that there wasn't a lot of chase left. And I hate to say I got bored, because that might be a stretch, but it didn't have the same appeal, because if you're a collector, you need a chase. You don't collect things, put them in a room, leave them there, and it ends. It's an ongoing evolutionary. You're always building on it. You're always looking for a new angle, a new set, a better grade. And, when that stops or slows down, your taste and zest for it changes, and you need a new focus. And I had thought about cards, I had watched it over the shoulder a little bit, and I always had an interest. But then it was just, I'm an on-off kind of guy. I made the decision to turn off Gretzky and turn on cards, and I dove into cards, like you said earlier, 2 feet deep end, and I really pushed for knowledge and networking, and just started to create a focus, and here we are today, just building on the focus.
And so why don't you tell the viewers, what is your focus in cards now? What are you focused on? I mentioned earlier, Hall of Fame rookies, the PSA set registry. Is that it? Or are you doing a few other projects as well?
No, I started out, I consciously through talking to, some of the Jeffrey Griffiths, Earl, Kevin, some of the people that knew a little bit about cards and which were the best and most desirable sets, maybe the most obscure or some of the most collected sets. And I consciously decided to focus on 3 things. I wanted to get a PSA graded, a high grade PSA card of every member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, and that's almost 400 cards in that set. And I decided to collect the 51 Parkhurst set because it's probably, at least from where I sit and what limited knowledge I have at this point, one of the most popular, well-known sets there is, and it seems to be very desirable. It's certainly appreciating, and people seem to chase it pretty hard. So I decided to collect that set, but I wanted to collect it in a minimum grade 8. So, you know, I didn't buy cards lower grade, only a couple. Then I cut myself off and said, no, if I can't get it in an 8, I'll wait. And that's hard for me to do, but I did it. And I decided to collect the 23 Patterson set. It seemed to be pretty obscure in good condition. The appeal of trying to find a Bert Corbeau card caught my attention. Those became my 3 sets, and those are where I focused on, and I've done quite well so far on them, and that's where I sit.
Okay, so the 51 Parkhurst set, the 23 Patterson set, and the Hall of Fame Registry set, we can call it. So for anyone watching who isn't as familiar with hockey, let me just explain. The 51 Parkhurst set is a 105 card set. It's the first post-war hockey card set. So it actually has the rookie card of probably about 20 Hall of Famers, including Gordie Howe, Maurice Richard, Terry Sawchuk, Doug Harvey, Bernie Geoffrion, Ted Lindsay. The list goes on. It is an amazing set. It's a landmark set. It is a very important set. And a lot of people have heard of it. The 23 Patterson is more obscure, as you said, but it's also really important because it was really the first set since the 1912 Imperial Tobacco sets finished their run of 3 years in a row. So it has the rookie card of, you know, Howie Morenz, who is known as the first superstar of hockey, sort of the Babe Ruth of hockey, if you will, along with King Clancy, Jack Adams, Aurel Joliot, very important pioneers of the sport. So I do commend you on your choice of sets. I also collect the rookies from those sets. So really amazing stuff there. You mentioned earlier that, you know, as a collector, you're always looking for the next target, the next set. However, with those 2 projects, once they're done, they're done. But lucky for you, collecting the Hall of Fame set registry of almost 400 cards, that one can take a while, and there's always new players being added. Just last week, we added 4 more players. So it's kind of a living set in a way. Is that what kind of keeps you going right now, seeing as the 23 Patterson and the 51 Parker sets are finite and likely complete?
Yeah, those 2 sets are complete. I mean, I even managed to find one of the only 4 graded Corbeaus in the world. So those 2 sets are complete. But you know, I'm always looking at auctions to upgrade, you know, the PSA grades on any of those cards. The Hall of Fame member set, I mean, there's some tough cards in there to find in high grade. I'm doing well. I'm 83% complete on the set, and it's the second highest rated set in the registry right now, at 83%. So the quality of the cards I've managed to find is quite good. So I still got some work to do there. Some of the cards that I need, I've never seen, and you're right. I mean, every year there's 3 to 5 or, you know, new cards to add to that set, but I'm already looking ahead. So any players from the last 25, 30 years that I think will eventually get into the Hall of Fame, I've bought those cards in PSA 10. So, you know, when they get in, I'm a little bit ahead of the game there. So
yeah, I get. Well, then I'll frame it a little bit differently. You're always looking for who you think are the next people that will be Hall of Fame worthy and eligible, right? If you're already ahead a couple of years, there are current players who you might think, oh, this guy could likely be a Hall of Famer. So that'll at least keep you interested. I want to also mention, you mentioned that you acquired one of only 4 graded Bert Corbeau cards. So again, for anybody watching who is not familiar with the 23 Patterson set, the Bert Corbeau, while he is somewhat of a common player, that card is known amongst the hockey vintage collecting world as the toughest card there is. It's somewhat akin to the Honus Wagner from the T206 series, except that that Honus Wagner's a Hall of Famer and Bert Corbeau isn't, but it's a card that was only sent out to collectors who completed the whole set and sent it. I think you had to send in the whole set and they'd send it back to you with hole punches and the Bert Corbeau or something like that. So is yours hole punched, or is it redeemed, or is it intact?
Mine is completely intact, not canceled, and it's a PSA 2. There's one that's graded authentic. There are 2 2s and a 4, and I have one of the 2s, so I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, probably not going to be getting the 4 anytime soon. Okay, so there, we've covered off kind of your history, what got you through collecting Wayne up until your foray into collecting hockey cards, which obviously has been, as I mentioned earlier, you really did jump right in. But I am aware, and maybe now is a good time to talk about it, you do have one non-hockey card in your collection. I know you're very proud of it. What is that, and why did you decide to acquire it?
Well, I have the Mickey Mantle Topps card that everybody desires and dreams to have. It's in a PSA 5. You know, I saw it in an auction, and the bids were where I wanted them to be, and I thought it was just a great opportunity to pick up an absolute legendary card for a good price. I knew that it was an investment type piece, and I jumped on it. Not necessarily because I'm a baseball fan or a baseball collector. I'm definitely not at this point, but I just looked at it as a good opportunity, and it's a beautiful card.
Yeah, congratulations on it. Certainly on my want list, and I think anyone who likes vintage has that on their target list for sure, even though it's out of reach for most of us. Shawn, do you consider your cards an investment, a collection, or somewhere in the middle?
Somewhere in the middle, because I like to think that I buy relatively wisely, because at the end of the day, there's always an end game. You know, we're all going to eventually have an exit strategy or a plan. I'm going to get to a point in my life where things are probably going to be more important than the card sets, or I may want to, you know, pass them on to the kids or cash out. Who knows? So you want to be conscious of what you're investing in throughout the process of fulfilling your collection dreams. So lucky for me, I've always managed to focus on things that paid off in the end. And I like to think the things that I'm focusing on now will kind of be on that same page, so that if I decide to have a new chapter in my life down the road, that this isn't something that's going to just have been a big expense. You know, at the end of the day, you want to at least get your money back, right? If you're going to cash out, but it's definitely a passion. It's a collection. I love the chase. I love meeting people and working to get deals done, to get a card, to check that off the list. But yeah, I like to think I'm buying wisely in that process, but I'm definitely doing it for the enjoyment I'm getting out of putting it together.
Awesome.
And if it costs me at the end of the day, so be it. You know, if it does go the other way, so be it. I'm willing to accept that risk.
Well, I mean, as an enthusiast myself, and knowing, you know, the type of cards you have, I can't see you ever taking a loss on what you've acquired. So to any of, you know, your wife, your friends, your family watching right now, he's done well. He's invested his money well, and he's collected well. Okay, I also want to make mention of the cap you're wearing tonight. It looks like that's a goat on there. Is that to represent that Wayne Gretzky is the GOAT?
That's a goat. You can't see it, but there's a 2857 in the goat.
That represents the career points that Wayne Gretzky has scored, which I think I read just earlier today somewhere. It's like 43% higher than anybody else has in the history of the league. So if you are watching and you don't know just how dominant Wayne Gretzky was, and how you know firmly he is the greatest of all time, you'll get arguments for Bobby Orr, maybe the odd one for Mario Lemieux, but I think the two people on screen would squarely vote for Wayne Gretzky as far as who the GOAT is in hockey. If you're watching and you collect other sports, you want to start collecting hockey cards, every hockey card collector, in my opinion, needs to own a Wayne Gretzky rookie card. So go get yourself one. All right. We're going to go to a few more comments, Shawn, and then we're going to let you start telling some stories about some of the experiences you have. I'm going to share my screen in a few minutes. We've got a few things kind of queued up, some pictures, some headlines where Shawn has been the subject. So we'll get to that. But first, Aaron, welcome to the show. Austin Olson says, I had a similar light bulb moment to you that got me started with collecting, except it was McDavid, the next Gretzky. I'm sure Shawn, as an Oiler collector and fan, will agree with that. Frankie says, I agree. The chase is part of what makes collecting fun and keeps you in it for the long run. It's true, right? For me, Shawn, tell me if you agree, but for me, I find there's different points of really highlights for acquiring a card. They're searching on eBay or searching at a card show or searching at a card shop in the showcases. Then there's actually bidding. You get a little bit of a thrill when you place a bid and see, am I the high bidder? And then when that clock ticks down and it's over, did you win the card? You won the card, you're excited. And then you've got about a week or so, or nowadays during COVID, you have maybe a couple months of actually anticipating the card arriving in your mailbox. In the hobby, we see so many people posting about their mail days because it just represents one of the most exciting aspects of collecting are the mail days. And then if you're like me, you take it out of the bubble envelope, you look at it, you appreciate it, and then you process it into your collection, whatever that means to you, scanning it, logging it on an Excel sheet, adding it to the new card ladder, whatever it is that you're doing to process it into your collection. So do you go through that as well? Do you take that time to really enjoy it before it gets tucked away?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, before I even get it, I've already gone on and I've taken the PSA number and I've registered it and I've updated my spreadsheet and ticked another one off the list kind of thing. And then it's the matter of it showing up, like you said. And, when you open it up and you size it up and ensure that it's everything you thought it would be, and you put it in its place in the stack of cards over there where it belongs, and then you start the next hunt. It starts all over again. But yeah, there's nothing like the mail days. I mean, it's some of the funnest posts on the Facebook groups is watching people's mail days and seeing the excitement and seeing some of the gems that they've uncovered.
Yeah, and you said, you receive the card and then the hunt begins again for the next one. But in actuality, the hunt already started and you've probably got a mail day coming within a few days anyway. So it's right. It's a constant anticipation of what's coming in next for those of us that buy cards regularly. So yeah, I'm sure many people can identify with that are watching. All right. Scott says minimum 8 for your 51 Parker set. Wow. Yeah, it's certainly impressive. And you mentioned earlier, Shawn, that you are currently number 2 on the registry for the Hall of Fame, NHL Hockey Hall of Fame set. Number 1 is obviously Jeffrey Griffith, correct?
It is. And that's one of the people that I've contacted with over the years, or the months really, of collecting that I've really bonded with. He's been an absolute inspiration. I have so much respect and admiration for him. It's next level.
Do you have his book? Do you have his Gretzky cards book?
Sorry?
Do you have his Gretzky cards book?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. All right, Archie says, hi, Shawn. Can't wait to hear your stories. We got them coming up. Earl says, the Corbo was short printed to make it harder for kids to complete the set and redeem it for a prize. Thank you, Earl. I wasn't quite accurate off the cuff there, so I appreciate the clarification. Ziggy says, thank you for the education and motivation. I've been thinking about chasing an iconic set with my sons. This is the tipping point. Can I ask if you can explain the PSA set registry? I think that's an apt topic right now, but let's keep it short. Shawn, give a summary of what the PSA set registry is for Ziggy and anybody else who might be interested.
Sure. Well, I'm not sure if you're even familiar with PSA, but they're arguably the leader in grading sports cards and whatnot. So you can go on to the registry and they've listed every set in production on there, and you can go on and register your set. So every time you get a card, you can go on and register your PSA number and it gets credited to your set. And everybody who's chasing that set, their sets are getting scored and graded based on the assigned grades that PSA have given them. And you end up getting ranked with all of the people collecting those sets. So like was mentioned earlier, my 51 Parkhurst set is currently number 3 on the registry. So there are 2 active sets that score higher than mine do. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
And you mentioned earlier when you were explaining this, you said that you go onto the PSA website and you enter your PSA number. Just to clarify, every PSA slab has a little certificate in it, commonly referred to as the flip. And on the flip, along with a description of what card it is, the player's name, the set, the year, there's also a serial number. Hold it up a bit higher, Shawn, if you don't mind. There's also a serial number
Maybe.
That's sort of under the grade. If you hold it higher and tilt the top towards the camera, that'll help. Tilt the top towards the camera, and yeah. So you can, it's tough to see, but there's a serial number in there. So you go to the PSA website and you're logged into your set registry account and you type in the serial number and it will basically stick it in your collection or your inventory and assign it to that set. So it's a competitive sort of arena to play in. A lot of people want to see their name at the top of that list. I'm sure Shawn does. I used to be one of those. I've sort of faded away from some of that stuff, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a way to, I guess, rank your collection against other people that are doing it. The fact that there's 2 higher ranked 51 Parker sets and yours is a minimum 8 is pretty much mind blowing. All right. Austin says, wow, Mantle, I'm jealous. Yeah, I think everybody would like that card. Jay says, hey, Shawn, what cards are you going to be chasing for future Hall of Famers? Seeing as many will have rookie card versions, will you be chasing the highest value card? So Shawn's basically saying a lot of these players now have 15 to 20 rookie cards, unlike the vintage guys. So how do you pick which card you're going to chase, Shawn, knowing full well that in the future, PSA is going to put it out to vote to all the registry members as to which card they want to be brought in as the card for that particular registry set? How are you going about sort of preemptively selecting or speculating as to which card the hobby will choose for that?
It's a really good question, actually. Yeah. The one thing about PSA is that in a lot of their cards, there's not just one card that's considered a valid rookie. Some players, it lists 3 or 4 cards that you could have in the vintage side of things that would qualify as a rookie, and none of them holds a better grade value or scoring rating than the other. So whichever one you get, the objective is to get one in the highest grade that you can. Now, moving forward to say McDavid, where he's, and I don't follow current cards at all, but he's probably got 100 rookie cards, and some of them are tens of thousands of dollars. You know, I'm definitely not going after those. I am going after a nice 10 Young Guns, for example. It's still a fairly expensive card, but no, I think at the end of the day, the registry will pick a card that's a little more within reach for collectors, and they're not going to pick, you know, an insert card where there's 15 or a signature card where there's, you know, 99 when there's thousands of normal upper deck cards or something. So I'm just making a judgment call, looking for the popular card that's affordable and hanging on and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Because the end of the day, my hand will score just as good as that $10,000 or $50,000 card.
Yeah. Smart approach. What I've been noticing for the recent players added is that they seem to be adding 1 card per player, and it seems to be the one that's the most sort of accessible in most cases. I do hope that they do start to add more selection. So for Crosby, for example, it could be his Young Gun or his SB Authentic Future Watch Auto, maybe even the Cup, maybe his Ice, among others. So that would be great too. Earl wants to compliment you on your hat. I think I do too. Bruce makes a great point. He said, Shawn is so awesome at helping people decipher real and fake Wayne Gretzky autographs. And it's true. I've noticed a lot of people in the Wayne Gretzky collecting group on Facebook will often put up an auto and say fake or real. And you're always quick to jump in and provide your opinion on that, which is obviously very highly valued by the hobby. So great point, Bruce. Thank you for tuning in. Nice to see you, my friend. And Shawn, thank you for providing that service to the hobby. It is very, very valuable. All right. Scott says his collection is amazing to see. Shawn is such a generous guy, showing off the collection to people who stop by. Love popping into his place. Shawn, I'm going to ask to come see it myself next time I'm up in your neck of the woods. So Carlo says it's true. Having the mail day helps extend enjoying the card a little longer before it goes in the box with others. Carlos knows what I'm talking about. Another great content provider on YouTube, everybody. Channel is called Because I'm Carlos. Check it out. One of my favorites. Big Daddy Cool says, hi, Shawn. That's funny. I actually, in other life, actually, my name on ComC is Big Daddy Cool Breeze. So that's pretty funny. Hi, Big Daddy. Welcome to the show. Les, another Gretzky collector up in Edmonton, says, hey, Shawn, is it true that Upper Deck may be all out of Gretzky game-used jerseys, which is why we don't see any more of those nice Oiler patches or even some of the King stuff like the 10-11's Cup set of limited logos? Can you speak to that at all, Shawn?
Well, I don't know it to be fact, but, you know, I could certainly speculate that that's probably true. I know of a lot of the game-worn Gretzky jerseys that exist. I've owned a lot. I've seen a lot. But the fact of the matter is, there are still a lot of unknown game-used Gretzky jerseys just sitting in someone's closet somewhere. Because we can account for a lot of them. We know they've surfaced. We know who's bought them, who's traded for them, etc. So many exist, but there are still so many blanks that we haven't pieced together or seen yet. So I think there's more to surface, but I do think it's quite possible that Upper Deck probably isn't sitting on a lot. I've worked with Upper Deck on a few things in the past. I'm not sure. I know they're buyers for sure, but I think it's very viable that they're running short. I mean, some people that have that stuff are hanging on to it, and the prices are getting ridiculous, even to cut up and put into 100 or 200 little patches.
So you said a few seconds ago that you've owned lots of Gretzky game-worn jerseys. Can you quantify that for us? How many?
I got to be honest with you. You might think, how can I not know? But I don't know. I've owned.
that only means that it's a lot. Can you give us a range, just to give us an idea?
I know one day I got contacted, like I do so often, out of the blue. Someone said, "You know what? My dad is a huge fan. He's coming to town. It's his 50th birthday. It would mean so much if I brought him over to see your collection. He knows all about you. He's a big fan of the collection." And I said, "Sure." So she brings him over with his wife and her 2 or 3 siblings, and I lined them up in front of my Gretzky display jersey, and each of them had on a Gretzky jersey, and they looked over their shoulder. And it's one of the most amazing pictures I've taken in the room, was the 6 family members all wearing Gretzky jerseys. It was kind of cool.
So over 50 have you owned?
Over 50 for sure. Maybe in the teens, I would say I've actually owned or flipped or been part of. I've authenticated dozens I've worked on. Okay. Lots of fakes. I've seen lots of fake jerseys.
Okay, interesting. All right, Ziggy wants to say thank you so much. So I can start a PSA registry set as I collect. Yes, you can. I thought I need to have the whole set first. No, you don't. This is it. I am hooked and ready to start my PSA set. Love it. Awesome. Cardboard Nostalgia, Billy, another YouTube content creator. He breaks vintage, but by vintage, I mean like 90s and early 2000s wax boxes of product, and shows them on his YouTube channel. Check him out. He says, Young Guns seem to be the iconic card for most modern players. The cup isn't realistic for most collectors or even collectors with deep pockets. Agreed on all points, especially the cup. Well, they aren't all, the cup is a brand of hockey cards, and obviously they're not always accessible to all collectors because they're short printed, number one, and number two, they are pricey. That is the top set in the hobby as far as hockey goes. Jay wants to know, what Facebook group are we talking about? Shawn, what is the exact name of the Facebook group that we are talking about, where you kind of give your opinion on the authenticity of rookie cards of autographs and so forth?
Well, there's several. Like, just go onto Facebook and search Wayne Gretzky Collecting, and you'll get some hits there. But there are multiple groups. I'm a member of a couple, but Wayne Gretzky Collecting and whatnot. There's several. There's ones that are autographs. There's ones for just collecting cards. But go in and search. You'll find the big ones, and look for the ones with the big memberships. There's a couple in there that I'm one of the moderators and whatnot on, and Tim Marin has probably the single best Gretzky group. I would highly encourage you to look for his group. Great group of people, very helpful.
Tim, if you're still watching, feel free to post the name of the Facebook group in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen so everybody can see. Paul wants to know, as a Gretzky collector, how do you feel about his jerseys being cut up and put into cards?
I struggle with it on one point, but on the other hand, from a business perspective, because I'm a businessman too, I get the business. I get that they're a company that has a strategy and a mandate to make money at the end of the day. And we both know that that's made them and makes them a boatload. Those chase cards and the insert cards that have the patches and whatnot. So I understand the business side, but from the historical preservation side, it's a real shame. It truly is, because you take a jersey that somebody who ruled and dominated the game wore when he achieved milestone moments. To take it and cut it up is really a travesty. it really does belong in the Hall of Fame or in a key collection. It really shouldn't be cut up. You know, you can't appreciate a piece of it. I'm sorry, it's just not the same as going over and pulling it over your head or holding it, you know.
Yeah, fair comment. The only thing is you can't pull it over your head or hold it if you're at the Hall of Fame. You can only see it, which is still wonderful. Don't get me wrong. And I will add, as a collector, so it doesn't offend me as a collector because I don't, memorabilia to me, you know, as you said earlier, a lot of this stuff is locked up in people's closets, really hidden from the public, never to be seen. I'd rather get chopped up into 1,000 pieces and put into cards, and 1,000 different people can own a small piece of Wayne Gretzky's game-worn memorabilia and other players, but that's just my personal opinion and thoughts as a collector. Scott says, I don't have much for Gretzky in my collection, but I do have a rookie card that I acquired from Jeremy. It has the blue lines on the back that people were putting a premium on. Do you know much about that? I mean, I have an answer to that. Shawn, do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I mean, the argument is do the blue lines mean that it's a first print run of the rookie cards? And I firmly believe it doesn't.
Same.
But I tell you what, I don't mind marketing it when I'm selling a rookie card because it does add a premium to the card because people are believers that it's a first run card. And, you know, I think it's a printing press error.
Yeah.
You know?
Hey, Matt, me too. Let me add that, I mean, this is a question that comes up all the time in the hobby. A lot of people will advertise them as first print Wayne Gretzky rookie cards. And what it is there's two very fine parallel blue lines going through the card horizontally on the edges. It fades in the middle where there's the graphic of the skate, but you see it on both the right and the left edge. It can be a little bit more vibrant on certain copies than others, but to me, it's just a fallacy. It's kind of like an old wives' tale type of thing. People think it's a first print, and it's never been, no one can tell you they have evidence of this. So in my opinion, when people advertise it that way, either they just believe it. They don't know that it might not be true, or they're doing it to add value to the card. So for myself, and I just sold one today, the buyer might be watching. And, you know, what I say to people is, yes, it has the blue lines. And I've even gone as far as taking a little price tag and writing blue lines instead of first print, because I'm not comfortable saying that it's first print. I've actually thought, well, maybe in the printing press, after a bunch got printed, there a little piece of dust got in there, a couple pieces of dirt got in there. So maybe they're actually later print cards versus early print cards. That would make more sense to me that way. But unless we know someone from the original Peachy factory, and Bobby Burrell, who a lot of viewers will be familiar with, I've asked him about this, and he also says, yeah, there's no proof of it. And he's like vintage hockey's official historian. He's written the books on it. So we'll leave it at that. All right. Anything you wanted to add there, Shawn?
No, I mean, that we're on the same page.
Okay. Anand says, thanks for the education. Can you talk about how to go about finding a game-used Titan stick or game-used items like gloves and helmets? You want to take that quick? We got to get into your stories here. The comments are coming, but why don't you address that?
The most common way is to get them from the auction houses that you have trust in, like, you know, Classic, for example. They're primarily, or have been primarily, a hockey memorabilia auction house, and you know, some of the collections they've auctioned off and handled are amazing. So you need to find an auction house that you have trust in, and then you need to study the piece and do your homework. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to do your homework and educate yourself on the piece and how to authenticate it so that you're comfortable with the piece. But you know, I highly recommend sticking to the auctions because typically they've done their homework and gotten it from sources and probably have photo matched it and things like that anyway. So I think that's the safest bet. Not to mention, if there is an issue, typically they'll stand behind the sale and work with you on resolution anyway. Whereas buying it from somebody's closet, maybe not so much.
Right.
Okay. Sources that are out there, you know, come to people like us who are willing to share the knowledge and whatnot, because we're all willing to help. Yeah.
Very, 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 very fair comment. Okay, Bruce says, would you rather a PSA or Beckett graded card? Do you think one holds more value over the other? In the interest of time, I'll take this for you, Shawn, because Shawn is only collecting PSA cards. I know this. He's in the PSA set registry, and he already sort of mentioned earlier that he believes PSA is the market leader. So we are entitled to our opinions on that, and that is Shawn's, as earlier mentioned. LP Hockey Card says, what would you recommend for my first mid-end Gretzky card? Again, Shawn, you're a rookie card collector, so is this something you could even opine on?
Well, I would still get a Gretzky rookie card. I mean, I really would. I would just get a lower grade one that you can afford, that appeals to you, because the market is hot. And whether it's a 1 or a 9, they're both escalating at rapid speeds, and they're both going to hold a strong place in the market. And there's nothing like saying you have the Gretzky rookie. I mean, that's the iconic card. So I would save your pennies and go for that Gretzky card at whatever level you can afford to get in at, and just hold it dear.
Yeah, and I would second that suggestion. I think, as I said earlier, I think if you're collecting hockey cards, I hate to say you need this, but I think you need a Gretzky rookie if you're a serious hockey card collector. Even if you're just getting into it, that's where I would start. Like, I would start there if you can, if it's within your resources to acquire one. Big Daddy Cool says Wayne Gretzky Collecting is the name of Tim's group. So there you go. There's the name of the group that is the preeminent Wayne Gretzky Collecting group on Facebook. Ryan says, I'm hoping to purchase my first Gretzky rookie card. Can Shawn help me with this? 500 range to maybe 800. Reach out to Shawn on Facebook if you'd like to work on a deal there. And LP Hockey Card says, how much is the cheapest rookie card of Wayne Gretzky? Well, LP, he's got 2, the O-Pee-Chee and the Tops. The Tops is cheaper, and the cheapest one will be a PSA 1 or a PSA Authentic. You can probably get into one for a couple $100. Okay, that's the bottom of the comments for now. Great. We're going to start telling some stories. Before we do, I just want to make mention, if you just joined or joined us late, this is the 25th episode of Sports Cards Live. I'm honored to have Shawn Chaulk, the Wayne Gretzky of Gretzky Collecting, as my guest and acquisitions associate for Classic Auctions. If you have not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, Shawn, we've been talking about highlights of your collecting career. You have many. How do you want to do this, my man? Would you like me to bring up some things on the screen, or do you just want to jump in and start telling some stories?
Boy, however you want to go. There's lots of stories.
Well, why don't we do this? I'm going to bring up, we'll do this because I have them queued up. We're going to share the screen, and we're going to look at a few times where you've appeared in the media because of your collection, and you can speak to these and what they meant to you. Okay. So Here we go. This first story was on CBC.ca, which is, Canada's main news network, I suppose I can say. And it talks about Wayne Gretzky collector fled Fort McMurray with bags full of memorabilia. There's a picture of Shawn pre-mustache I'm guessing in your basement or somewhere in your home, in the middle of your amazing display of your collection. Can you tell people what it was like? If you haven't heard, back in 2017, there were fires in Fort McMurray, Alberta, where Shawn, this is oil country, where Shawn, and I don't mean the oilers, I mean actual oil in the ground country, where Shawn lives and works. Shawn, tell us about that experience where your collection almost went up in flames. If you can even imagine this, people.
Yeah, but back in May of 2016, we had the famous wildfires up here, and they were huge. I mean, it was a 6,000 square kilometer fire, and I think that's probably for American viewers of around 4,000 square miles. So it was a massive, massive wildfire that ripped through our area, taking out 2,600 homes in its path. So, I got the call. I got up that morning, and we knew there was a fire burning south of the city. It had been burning a couple of days, but at that point, it wasn't a threat. And the fire was burning south of the Great Athabasca River, which has a 300 or 400 foot berth from each side of the valley. So we didn't really anticipate the fire being capable of jumping the river anyway. So the day of evacuation, I went to a meeting. And that picture there, by the way, is taken as my family evacuated our driveway. That's what we faced leaving our driveway that morning. I went to a meeting, and the sun was shining. It was beautiful. My wife was outside with our youngest. Our other two were in school. And I went to my meeting. And I went into my client's house, and 40 minutes later, I was emerging and exiting the meeting, and my phone kept ringing. And it was my wife, and she typically, if she knows I'm in a meeting, she's not going to call unless it's very important. So as I excused myself from the meeting, I took the call. My client's phone rang and she took a call as well. And we were both getting the same information that we had to leave and leave now kind of thing. And I walked out of that house and I went in the house, a beautiful sunny 32-degree day. I came out to Armageddon. It was insane. The sky was black. It was raining ash. It was just this eerie sense of chaos. And I got in the car and my wife said, like, we got to go. We got a 5-minute evacuation order. So I beelined it towards our house. I had to pass the kids' school on the way. I got into the school, took them out. The school was already in a bit of a panic state at that point, evacuating. Found my kids, got them home, got in the house. My wife had a bag by each of the kids' door, and she says, you got 5 minutes, pack what's important. So when I left the meeting, my manager was at the meeting with me, and at that time, he knew my neighborhood had an evacuation order, but his didn't. So he figured he'd follow me and help me get out. So he pulled into the driveway right behind me, and he came in and said, what can I do? And I said, we got to get the collection. So we go to my office while my wife looks after the kids, and I had 2 hockey bags in my office, believe it or not, in the event something ever happened. And I was literally busting open display cases, grabbing jerseys off mannequins and throwing them at Mark. And he was stuffing the hockey bags full of the most valuable jerseys I owned, my Stanley Cups, and anything that could fit. I opened my safe and grabbed the small valuable stuff, and I had 2 completely full hockey bags. I run back in the house. Everyone's ready to go. We load it all in the vehicles, and all out we go on our evacuation. Well, during the evacuation, we had to flip to go north because the highway was burning south. So we were pushed 20 kilometers north, which at the time I think was a 9-hour drive because of the gridlock. And we got to our point of evacuation, and we spent a day and a half up there in a camp when we were finally given the green light that we were going to get lifted out of there. But we couldn't take our luggage. So we were allowed to pack 1 bag between us, which we did, which meant all my hockey memorabilia was staying in a truck. So we left, the hockey memorabilia stayed. So 2 weeks later, we're still evacuated because it was a 5-week evacuation. My memorabilia is still sitting in a truck. I'm frightened to death, afraid it's been robbed or whatever. And my brother, who's one of the fire captains up here, said, hey, I can get your truck off site. I can take it into town and get it to this command center we're working out of. So he got it to there. So now my truck is sitting in town with my collection in it. The air is full of smoke. I'm scared my jerseys are going to get damaged. So another 2 weeks pass after my collection has now been sitting for a full month in the back of a truck. Oh. And I finally found someone on the inside that was willing to bust because we weren't allowed to come to the fire line, right, to take stuff in or get stuff out. But I had someone inside that was willing to risk it and go get my truck. He came to the fire line. I snuck in, got him a set of keys when I drove up from Edmonton. He went and got my truck and came out through the line and gave me my truck. And I booted it back to Edmonton, 4 hours with my collection in tow, or what I had of it. And that was how I saved my collection.
Wow. That is a crazy, crazy story. I can't imagine, like for card collectors, it might be a little bit easier. As, guys that have a million cards, maybe not, but cards are small, they're compact, they're easy to move, they fit nicely in box. I could probably clear out my collection in 5 to 10 minutes, but when you're dealing with mannequins and jerseys and sticks, these are large objects and they're in different areas. I mean, that must have been, I don't know what was going through your mind at that time, but it must have been like terror in a way. So happy.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It was a bit of an awakening, really, because I realized just how easy it was to lose something that was worth so much to my family. And it's part of the reason that I transitioned into, like you said, something that's physically smaller, fits in a safe, and I can evacuate with a lot quicker than I could with this stuff that's really virtually uninsurable.
Yeah. Right, exactly. All right. Richie Barone in the house. Rich, the Mayor of Canada, welcome to the show, my friend. Scott Nobles just says, What a story. And Scott Barr says the fire and evacuation was different level and experience beyond compare. Okay, let's go to the next one that I have queued up here, which is related to and also CBC Canada is the media outlet that put this out there. Again, CBC is Canada's major news outlet. And this is a story about this tattoo that you saw on some of my promo pieces lives on Shawn's shoulder. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you getting inked with the Great One?
Yeah, I have some tattoos anyway, so I've always been a tattoo guy, and I always wanted to get one that represented what I did, kind of thing. And a couple of years before getting this, I found this artist named Steve Butcher out of New Zealand, and he did primarily basketball tattoos, but at this level, that was pretty well all he did. He was rated one of the top 5 artists in the world. He was one of the however they label themselves, the big 5 or whatever. Traveled extensively all over the world doing his work, and I reached out to him, and it took me the greater part of 2 years to get a response. So I finally got in touch with his assistant and said, hey man, like, come on, I've been trying for 2 years here. I'm a Gretzky guy. Google my name, you'll see my collection. I just want a Gretzky piece. And he says, you want a Gretzky piece? That's cool. I think Steve's gonna like this. So he went and talked to Steve, and Steve's like, oh man, I want to do this. He really wanted to do Gretzky because of Gretzky's position in hockey compared to the Kobe Bryants and the Michael Jordans that he built a career inking. So we made arrangements, and a year ago in June, I flew to Toronto and he flew into Toronto, and I spent a couple of days there with him, and I got what you see on the screen.
Awesome. That is such an accurate likeness of Wayne, and just looking at, like, right in this area here, all the different wrinkles in the jersey, and wow, the shadows on the face. An amazing piece of art that you now wear proudly. So very cool. Okay, let's go on to the next sort of headline here. This is an article that was on a website which I'd never heard of before now, called therichest.com. 26 sports memorabilia collections that are worth millions. So this is a pretty cool one. A lot of hockey game worn jerseys in this guy's collection. But yours comes down here below. There's actually Pelé made the list. I mean, if not the most important soccer player of all time, made the list with his collection. This sports car, I'm not sure whose that was, but yours comes up very shortly here. There's Marshall Fogel, very well-known collector. And there's the same picture that we've already seen, number 20. And I will mention, this says 23 of 25, but I've looked at this list, and it's not in order of anything. It's really random. And I would say that from my estimation, Shawn's collection is probably the top 1, 2, or 3 most valuable on this whole list. So Ken Kendricks, this guy owns the Arizona Diamondbacks and owns the Honus Wagner that's graded a PSA 8. It's controversial, but it's also the first card ever graded by PSA. So pretty interesting. And then you've got several more. So that's really cool. Gary Cypress has a museum in Los Angeles. I've actually been here. I've seen this collection. It is the most amazing collection I've ever seen. And worth 30 million. I think that's low. The guy's got full Babe Ruth uniforms, like from cleats to cap. Amazing stuff. And I don't think it's open to the public, but I was there in 2009 with Upper Deck, and they got us in to see this. It was amazing. Tony Romo was there with us. Bill Mastro, famous collector, auctioneer in the hobby. I think he might be in jail now, though, for some wrongful, or maybe he's out by now. But in any event, your collection was recognized here among other very, very important and influential collectors and collections. So anything about this article you can speak to?
I have to be honest with you. I had no input into that article. It surfaced and somebody sent me a link to it. I was shocked to find out that I was there and in the list and whatnot. So, I don't have much to say about it because, I didn't even know it was being written. So they used the information that had been written about the collection and other stories. What can you say? It's an absolute honor to be mentioned with some of those people in terms of collecting. But some of those collections are pretty sick. I mean,
yeah, no, that would be amazing, man. That is exactly as you put it. That is just very cool. And the final one we're going to look at, and I call this one because this is on Sportsnet. So Sportsnet, one of Canada's main sports channels, sports networks, and co-anchor Ken Reid was the guest on my show about a month ago. So, you know, really an important outlet in Canada. Shawn, what can you say about this story here?
Well, that story there was, I think it was 2012. I had 2 years previous been invited to a dinner in Edmonton by the Kinsman Club to display my collection, and Wayne wanted to see it in person before the show that they were doing for 1,200 guests or something, a fundraiser. So I put my collection on display there, and I did the show. Wayne toured the collection with me in private. It was absolutely phenomenal hour. We did that show, and then I thought to myself, I need to bring this to Fort McMurray, you know, my own home. So I came back to Fort McMurray and started thinking about how I could create an event to bring Wayne here and provide something that would benefit the community or some group in town. In any event, I ended up selling my idea to the college, and we put together a board of directors. We created an event, and the intention, aside from it being Wayne, the intention of the event we created was to raise $500,000 through a series of events. We would use that money and invest it, create an endowment, and pay out $25,000 a year annually to college athletes in the form of scholarships. So this became our first event, and it was a night we put together where Wayne would be the keynote speaker. We didn't call it, but the theme was Wayne and his enforcers. So Wayne was the keynote, and we had Darren Langdon, who's an enforcer that skated with Wayne in New York. We had Kelly Chase from St. Louis, who was our MC, an absolutely amazing individual, great speaker. We had Dave Semenko, God love him. And we had, who else did I have? Which team am I missing? Marty McSorley was the other enforcer we had. And to add a twist to the theme of them talking about what it was like to play with Wayne and, you know, to be his backup and things, I brought in a friend of mine, Brian Trottier, to be on the panel because I wanted to cover off what it was like to be at the tail end of a dynasty and Wayne to be at the beginning of a dynasty and talk about the dynamics of that transition of power, so to speak. And it made for a very, very awesome conversation on stage for the 500 guests. It was an amazing, amazing night. Wayne was in town for 3 days, saw the collection again. We did some functions, got to spend a lot of time with him. After the event that night, I think one of the most memorable hour or two of my time ever around him and those guys was, you know, the night had wrapped up, the event was over, we went back to the hotel, and we had a private little area set up out in the lounge, and it was about 10 of us. Brian Trottier, Liam McGuire, who was one of my guests up there at that event, Wayne and Kelly Chase and whatnot, and we just sat around, and it was just us, free-flowing beer, and snacks. And the stories I heard that night were absolutely mesmerizing. And when you get in a room with Wayne Gretzky and company, you don't talk. You're welcome to talk, but you don't get the opportunity, and you don't feel like you should, because you don't feel like there's much you can say that would add any value to what you're hearing. So you just shut up, you drink your beer, you eat your pretzels, and you just absorb what's going on. And I'm telling you, that was absolute gold. Because when Wayne is having a beer and sitting down in private where his guard is down, he is the most fun individual, and he owns the floor. You can't speak. And the stories are amazing. And every now and then he'd think of something, and he'd go up and he'd slap his hand down on my leg or the guy next to his leg and say, I gotta tell you this. And he'd get into this story about how Eric Lindros was a wine ass at the 91 Canada Cup or something. Just some amazing stuff that you wouldn't hear anywhere else. So that's probably the best times.
That's an unbelievable story. You know, how many of us have ever been out there and you're just having that discussion with your friends and family? It's like, if you could have dinner with any one person, living or dead, who would it be? You know, if you're in Canada, you know, most people are Wayne Gretzky goes through their mind as to who that person would be. So you got to do that. What an amazing experience that was. And thank you for taking us through it. It's really cool that he had different players from all the different teams, teammates from the different teams that he was at there with him. And I want to mention, you mentioned Brian Trottier, and you know, Brian Trottier was actually the part of what you could almost call two dynasties, right? He was with the Islanders for the 4 consecutive Stanley Cups in the early 80s. And then he won cups, at least one, maybe 2, with Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr in the early 90s with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So talk about, you know, a real winning sort of caliber player there. So that was awesome to have him there too. We're just going to back up shortly for a second here. I wanted to call on, Eli here says, got to see the tattoo at the expo. Absolutely insane. Scott, about the fires, we all figured out what was important in those moments. No doubt. Can only imagine. Rich Barone makes a comment about the other collection that I mentioned in LA. Rich was with me at that event, actually, says that's an insane collection. And Rich also wants to say that Trottier is a god. Well, Rich lives on Long Island and is a huge Islanders fan. So I'm not surprised to hear that from Rich. He also says Tony Romo was very cool. Yeah, Tony Romo was wandering that museum with us, and we got to just rub shoulders with him. What a nice guy he was. Daniel wants to know, Shawn, if you had to pick the favorite piece of your Gretzky collection, what would it be? Tough question, I can imagine. And then just also because it's sort of related, Billy says, what Gretzky game worn piece do you consider to be the most iconic? Canada Cup, rookie year, retirement? What is your rarest item? So similar questions. Can you address those, please, Shawn?
I get asked that a lot, the first question especially. But the answer is probably not what you think. Because when I'll go back to the fire. When I fled that day and we topped up those 2 hockey bags with what I took, and I want to be clear, when we left that day, I didn't take what was most important to me for the most part. I took what was the most valuable, because when I looked out and saw that fire, I envisioned losing everything. And I wanted to make sure that I took the stuff that I could turn into money if I had to start over, because that's what we were faced with. Looking at the fire, right? So I took what was valuable, dollar for dollar. But the one thing that I made sure was in that bag, and would be in the bag if I had to do it again tomorrow, is my photo album of all of the times that I've been around them and done things like Gretzky Fantasy Camp, my events. It would be my photos. Because the rest of this stuff at the end of the day is just stuff. It's assets. You call it that if you want, collectibles. Some people call it junk. But at the end of the day, it's just stuff that you can buy and sell. You can't buy and sell my memories. My photo album is worth gold to me. And you know that at the end of the day, that's the number one thing to me, is just taking my piece of it away.
What can you tell us about this vehicle here, this Mercedes-Benz?
That car was Wayne's. It's a 1986 Mercedes flagship car in its day, a hardtop convertible. And Wayne drove it in 86 in Edmonton. And when he was, quote unquote, done with it, Ian Berrigan, who was his business manager and partner in some things at the time, took the car. And Ian had it for years and years and years and drove it. And Brad knew Ian, Brad Foote from Edmonton, who a lot of you guys know, very, very influential guy in the hobby, has been for many years. He knew Ian, and Ian approached Brad about, did I know anyone who'd want the car? And he thought maybe I might, kind of thing. So Brad made a call to me, and between the 3 of us, we put together a deal, and I ended up with the car. When I got the car, it was in pretty good shape, but I sent it to Vancouver to a place called Chaotic Customs, and I had it restored to factory conditions, so it became a new car again. And I drove it. I put on a nice license plate that said was 99s, and I drove the car, and it was a conversation piece. And I even have a beautiful picture of me in front of the car, or in front of my old house, leaning on the car, and Wayne autographed it to Shawn. I really hope you enjoy the car, Wayne Gretzky. But this was pre-Wayne seeing my collection in person that year in Edmonton in 2010. And when he saw the car, he's like, what did you do? You had it restored. And he wanted to know all about the restoration and how much it cost me to do and all that stuff. And he said, I want to buy it back. And I said, well, it's not for sale. Sorry. So for 2 years, he literally dropped the bomb on me every couple of months, saying that he was ready to buy the car again and I should sell it to him. And it took 2 years of him asking before I said, okay, damn it, you can have the car back. So he said, how much do you want? I told him the number. Literally 2 days later, FedEx was at my door with a check with his signature on it, which is I still have a copy of.
Awesome.
And 5 days after that, a truck showed up and said, we're here for the car. And the car disappeared. So it's Wayne has it in California again.
That's such a cool story, man. Did you think ever about saying, hey, Wayne, what do you got to trade me for it instead of a cash price?
No, I guess I probably should have played that angle, shouldn't I?
Well, you could, huh? You could. And question everybody wants to know, do you have Wayne Gretzky's cell phone number in your phone?
Maybe.
Okay. Fair comment. Fair comment. Note to self, grab Shawn's phone next time you see him and look for it. Okay. A couple more comments. Rich says, Wayne told me Denny Potvin was the greatest defenseman he ever played against, and he played with Paul Coffey. Otherwise, I'm guessing he'd say Paul Coffey, but he also played against Raymond Bourque. He played against Nicholas Lidstrom. He played against some fine players. So that's lofty praise right there. Corey Glass says, I got to meet Shawn last expo at the Gretzky event. Super nice guy. Was incredible to meet him in person. Welcome to the show, Corey. Rich says, nothing beats a memory, hence the photo album. Name says, that's a great perspective, Shawn. I appreciate that. And Richie fully agrees with a perspective that was recently shared. This is awesome. What a guy, says Austin. Yes, this is awesome. Okay, let's go on to some more stories. If you have anything else that you want to mention, or do you want to show a couple of your cards now, Shawn, that are really some of the more special ones to you?
Well, you saw the mantle I put up a little earlier. For you baseball guys, you know, it's always a great card to have in the collection.
And Shawn, let me just jump in and say, when you show the card, try and hold it a bit closer to your camera, and again, tilt the top towards the camera. That will help reduce the glare.
My Gretzky is actually only an 8.5, and while that's a fantastic card, I really want a 9. It's not as easy as you might think finding one for a decent price, and it's getting more ridiculous every day. But I am working on it. I really do need the 9.
What do you think a 9, like, what do you value a 9 at today? An O-Pee-Chee PSA 9 Gretzky rookie. What do you think you're going to have to pay?
I think I'm looking at least 40 US.
Yeah. Fair.
Seems to be where it's going.
Okay. What else? What other few cards do you have to share?
So there's Gordie Howe's PSA 8 rookie. Not sure how well you can see it there, but smaller card from the 51 set. Just an amazing card. And the Maurice Richard, of course, very, very, very desirable card. Great color in this version here.
Yeah, that's a card that often has sort of a light print to it where you can't even read the words and stats at the bottom. It's a blank back card, and if you're watching and you can see the black background kind of above the boards, oftentimes that is filled with fish eyes and it's very faded. So if you can get a solid black one with a black background with vibrant red, that's kind of what you're looking for in a 51 Parkhurst Maurice Richard rookie.
Yep, and the last one I'll show, because there's only 4 of them in the world graded that are not canceled, is the Bert Corbeau card from the 23 Patterson set. Very, very, very rare card. Of course, we talked about it earlier, but that's one of my favorites. But I have to admit, from this set, one of my all-time favorite cards is the Howie Morenz rookie from that set, and I have it in a 5, and it's one of my favorite cards.
Yeah, that to me is a Mount Rushmore of hockey cards. I own myself a PSA 3, and like you, It's absolutely one of my favorite cards. I bought it in a KSA 5 going back probably 10 or 15 years ago already, and I crossed it to PSA. It came back at 3, and I did not even care. I was just happy to have it kind of uniform with the rest of my collection, and very proud to own it. Andy says 8.5 on the Gretzky is fine. Don't worry about the upgrade. Well, you're dealing with somebody who likes his stuff in the highest grade he can afford, and that seems to be the 9.
There's a reason I want the 9 too. I have every Gretzky OPC Oilers card from the entire 80s in a 9, except the rookie. So it kind of needs to complete that little theme I put together.
I get that. Now, Shawn, owning all the other Gretzky cards in a 10 from the 80-81 forward would be attainable for you. Are you not chasing them in a 10 because you don't think you'll ever own the rookie card in a 10 and you want that 9 uniformity, or is there a different reason why you're not doing those in 10s?
I'm going to be totally honest. I actually just acquired almost all of those cards in one deal I did with a guy who had it done in a 9, and I had no desire to chase that. But when it presented itself to me, I thought that's very cool. And the rookie 9 is what I'm after anyway. So to complete it in a 9, even though I don't have any desire to get any of them in a 10 because I like the fact that it is a blanket set of 9s. So I'm going to keep that as it is, but try and get the Gretzky 9 to top it off.
Well, here you go. Big Daddy Cool, who's also Rod Kish, says I can help you find that PSA 9, buddy. And I don't know if he's talking about one he has that you guys are already in discussions about or something else, but good luck acquiring it. And Shawn, Rod, if you have one, hey, congratulations. Rich Barone says Canadians collect baseball. Richie, we do. And Richie, happy 4th of July to you and all our other American viewers watching. I want to really wish you all a happy 4th. It's a big day down in the United States. And considering everything else going on in the world, enjoy the day down there, please, everybody. Bruce Findlay just wants to say, Shawn, he met you through the Facebook group. Bruce, your comment is too long. It'll cut off our faces, so I'm not going to bring it on screen, but he had nice things to say. Jason says, wow, that's a big lineup of epic cards. That's what I dream about. Yes, many of us do. And Andy then says, okay, get a 9 already. All right. Again, if you're an anonymous Facebook user, you haven't gone to StreamYard.com and click the big blue button, I don't bring your comments on screen. So I will do this though. I will put this on the screen. Anyone who's watching on Facebook and your name is not seen, you can see right there. It says go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and click the big blue button. Once you do that, we can see your name, and I will bring your comments on screen if they are not really, really long, and we'll cut our faces off. Okay. We'll bring back on the ticker upcoming episodes. Okay, Shawn. Well, listen, you've told some awesome stories. I think people are really happy to hear them. I want to switch gears a little bit, and let's talk. I mean, I have on my list of things to talk about really collecting goals. But you've almost really talked about them already. You've mentioned the 51 set, the 23 Pattersons, the PSA set registry. Anything else? Is there anything else that you're almost toying with in your head and saying, hey, now that I've got those 2 sets done and I'm working on Hall of Fame, what are you contemplating? What are you thinking about you might start chasing next? And hopefully, your wife isn't watching to hear this.
That's one thing I can honestly say. My wife is amazing. She truly supports my foolishness and lets me do my thing. And I'm so grateful for that. She's so supportive. So I can't thank her enough for being in my corner for that stuff. In terms of card sets, I still don't know. One thing I've disciplined myself into is not jumping there until I'm satisfied with my current chase, because if you do, it becomes very hard to focus and it becomes very expensive very fast. So I'd like to put the ones that I'm working on to bed or to an area of fulfillment and then focus on something. But some of the most logical choices might be, some of that, like the 1912 early sets, because so many of them make up my Hall of Fame set. Yeah. Right. So on some of those sets, I'm 30-40% there on some of those early sets, just by virtue of collecting the rookies. Yeah. So, I toy with that as maybe completing those because I have so many of them in high grade already. And the ones that I don't have, because I've elected to get the rookies as part of my Hall of Fame set, are the less expensive ones. So it'd be quite easy to build some really good early sets there. But I really haven't nailed that down yet. But, you know, the one thing that I've been working on for a long time, but haven't had time to focus on, but it's the number one thing I want to do, is write a book. I really do. I want to write a book on the journey, the stories, because, you know, I give you the Reader's Digest version of some of the stories, but there's stories within the stories. And I'd really like to write a book on some of the absolute fun things I've been able to do, some of the amazing people I've been able to meet. And I don't mean celebrities, I mean fellow collectors and dealers and things. Just such an amazing network. There's so much to tell. And I want to write about, you know, Gretzky has been a big part of my life in terms of collecting and passion and pastime. I want to really write a lot about the authentication process of his memorabilia and what I've come to learn, and share that with people who might want the knowledge for, you know, the betterment of their own collections. Because I think there is a lot of information in there that could get cataloged at some point, or logged, and be a valuable resource.
Well, that would be awesome. And, you know, along with Austin, who says, I'll be the first buyer of that book, I look forward to buying that. I look forward, when a book comes out that's a hobby book, I always can't wait to see what that cover is going to look like. So I urge you to make sure that cover is awesome. I'm sure it will be. And I would appreciate an autographed copy. And how cool would it be to get Shawn's autograph and Wayne's autograph on that, on both of them? Speaking of that, Andy wants to know, do you have any Gretzky original photos graded by PSA?
No, I don't. I've never, my only experiences with PSA are in my card collection. I've never been a big graded photo guy or ticket stub guy or anything like that. It's not that I don't like it. I think it's fantastic. I love having things encapsulated. I think it's wonderful. It's just not something I've pursued. I have one encapsulated photo, and it's an 8.5 by 11 of Howie Morenz.
Oh, well, that's even cooler.
It's amazing. It's one of my favorite things I own.
I mean, Howie Morenz is an absolute legend. He's really is like the Babe Ruth of hockey. So really awesome. Really awesome. Yeah. Orv says, the book is an awesome idea. Enjoying the stories this evening. It would be great. Yeah. I think you got to do it, Shawn. And I think right here watching, you've got a lot of people that would buy that book. So make sure you do that. Okay. I also have on my list of things to discuss with you. I'm interested in kind of, you know, we've talked a lot tonight about collecting memorabilia, collecting cards, but from your 15-year history of collecting memorabilia to your relatively short history of collecting cards, what is your perception of the card market from the perspective of a memorabilia collector? Because for me, I'm a card collector only. Memorabilia, people always say, why would you want a patch card when you can go buy the whole jersey? Well, I don't collect jerseys. I'm just personally, I'm not interested in having a jersey hang in my closet. I'd much rather have a card sitting in my safety deposit box or in my closet or wherever. But that's just me. So again, for you, what is your perception of the overall card market to the extent you've studied it now in the last 1.5 to 2 years?
Well, from the minute I got in, and I don't know, because I don't know a lot about what happened in the market before 18, 20 months ago when I, came into the market. But it seems to be an absolute steady climb. It's hot. I mean, it's such a solid investment, it seems, right now. I'm not sure if it's a hot or cold thing, because I haven't been in the game long enough to really gauge that. But since I've been in, it's just go, 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 go. It's insane watching some of the trends on some of the prices these cards are seeing. And since the world, changed 3-4 months ago with COVID, things have gone on another level that I didn't predict, because I openly said the market will crash. I said everyone is going to be concerned about job security and the economy. The economy was pretty horrible anyway, because up here we're so oil dependent, and politics and everything. It was not a good economy anyway. But you throw in the shutdown of the world for a 3 or 4 month period. I said No, people are going to be scared. They're going to be liquidating. I'm going to get so many great cards for pennies on the dollar. I can't wait. That's so opposite. I mean, I've never, if it stays this strong, holy moly. I mean, you can sell a Gretzky rookie card today, get another one of the same grade in a week and bump it up a couple of $100. It's insane just watching that market.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Get over it. It's very strong. I highly encourage people, if you're thinking of getting in, get in. There's lots of great product out there that's gonna increase.
Yeah, a lot of people might think it's too late, but I know people have been saying it's too late for a lot of years, and this stuff doesn't seem to go down. About it's like a steady climb. It may have a few peaks and retreats, but I don't see any retreats going much lower than the previous peaks. So I'm with you on that. I think cardboard, if you're buying right, can be a phenomenal investment. You're lucky you got in when you did. 18 months ago was a great time to get in. 10 years ago was a better time, but 18 months ago was still pretty good. I was saying just last week, you can buy a Gretzky rookie for say if you bought it last year, it would have cost you $1,000. Now you buy it this year, that same card is going to be $2,000. Does it really matter if you paid $1,000 or $2,000 if in 10 years it's going to be worth $10,000?
Exactly.
I don't think it matters at that point. So again, if you collect hockey cards, you need to own a Gretzky rookie. And the more you wait, the more you're going to pay. That's been the theme for 20 years. Really, they were steady for a long time, but in the last 20 years, we've seen some pretty steady growth. Paul says, as a fellow Albertan, the card market feels overheated like Alberta's economy gets. Well, I'm also in Alberta, and the economy has been hot. When I remember those when we all got that $400 check, the Ralph Klein, the Ralph bucks back in like 2003 or something. It hasn't been too heated really since then, or that I've felt it anyway. Okay, Shawn, let's now move on to the last topic we're going to talk about before we start talking about classic auctions and your role with classic. This should be short, but I want to know, you're a personable fellow. You mentioned earlier that in your book, you want to talk about the characters, not just Wayne Gretzky himself, but you want to talk about the people you've met along the way, the Kevin Doties, the Earl Stromeyers along the way, the people you dined with at the Gretzky event that you held or were partially organized at the expo last year. What are your sort of desires in terms of getting out there and meeting more collectors in person, being more of a regular at the big card shows, whether it's the Summit in Edmonton, the Expo in Toronto, and even the National in the United States?
Right. Well, I back 15, 20 years ago, I used to go to the Toronto show regularly. And then that was when I was an autograph collector. Then I got into memorabilia and I stopped going. It was a different network, and that was more of a card autograph type thing for the most part. And now that I'm back into cards, I went to the show again in November. I'm going to be a regular. I don't plan on missing that. And the Edmonton shows, I'm a firm believer in getting out there, meeting people, networking. I've said since I went to college, you can never shake too many hands. You can never get too many introductions. Knowing people and networking is the most valuable part of the hobby for me. It means when I go to the shows, I don't go for the cards. I'm doing my card deals at home usually and on the internet and on social media. I go to the shows to shake hands, meet people, have a drink, go for dinner, and just to build that network, to put faces to names and have fun, socialize. And it seems to be every time I go to a show, or if I go to Edmonton to the Summit, which I've been to a couple times because it's local, you put more faces to names and you form more friendships. You said some names there that I consider some of the dearest people to me since I've started collecting cards and even transitioning from Gretzky. Kevin Doty, we talked about earlier, such a fantastic down-to-earth individual. We'll be friends forever, I'm sure. Earl Stromeyer, I've never met the man. We talk regularly. We've done tons of deals. I totally respect him. We've shared so many personal emails and gotten to know each other about our families and what makes us tick. My first experience with him was, I think, a show a year ago, and he knew from online that I wanted some cards, and he went to the Toronto show from the United States, and he saw some cards there that he knew I needed. So he messages me. I never knew Earl from Joe. And he messaged me and said, there's cards here. How can I help you? And I said, well, I really want them. And he goes, well, I'll buy them. So he buys these 8 or 10 Patterson cards and takes them back to the United States and gets them sent off to me, and I get them paid. And that was my introduction to Earl. The guy phones me. He doesn't even know me hardly, puts out his own money, takes his chance, comes back, sets me up with my car deal and asks nothing in return. So, how can you not relish a relationship that starts that way? How can you not respect that?
Yeah.
So I get that a lot in the hobby. It's such a tight-knit community. Jeffrey Griffiths, absolutely so influential and intelligent and knowledgeable about the hobby and the Hall of Fame and collecting and PSA. He's been my go-to encyclopedia. And, people like Sam Gruel, I could list, great book. I could list hundreds of names, I'm sure, of people that I feel the same about that have been so inspirational throughout the collecting of memorabilia, Gretzky, and now cards.
Yeah, and I just showed, this is Jeffrey Griffith's book. He literally wrote the book on Gretzky cards. I mean, it's a beautiful book, tons of pictures, descriptions on all of them, a full checklist on the back. An awesome book. I bought this at one of the expos from him, and as I like to, you get it autographed by the author. A really, really great collector, influential, as you mentioned. Speaking of Earl Strohmeyer, very briefly, Shawn, can you vouch for him for me? Because he bought some cards from me during the virtual expo, and I swear to God, just today, I'm in Canada. He sent me a check, a US dollar check. I just took it to the bank today, and they told me it's a 15 business day hold. That's 3 weeks before I want to send him these cards. Should I send them to them ahead of time?
I'm pretty sure you're good.
Okay, Earl. I'll ship those out for you on Monday. We won't wait for the hold to go through. Shawn vouches for you. Thank you very much. And just speaking of Kevin, because you mentioned earlier, that you may eventually complete the Imperial Tobacco sets, the C55, 56, and 57 sets from 1910, 11, and 12. Kevin can help you with those. He's built a beautiful C55 set, an amazing display in his house. Okay, we're going to run through a few more comments, then we're going to talk about classic auctions. Joe says, thanks for the great reflections and show. How is the hockey collecting culture in Europe? Joe, I can tell you, Europeans do love hockey, especially the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Sweden, Czech Republic, Slovakia, anywhere that there's a lot of hockey players, they love their hockey. I ship cards out there all the time. Terry says, I can't wait to meet you at the next Summit show. Rich says, have made some amazing friends through this hobby. Rich, you're one of mine there, my man. Best part of the hobby. Definitely. Jason cannot wait for the next Summit show. Rich says, Americans are nice people. Yeah, some of you, Richie. Some of you. Again, happy 4th of July to all of our American viewers, especially New Yorkers. Okay, Richie, settle down there, buddy. Settle down. I'm messing. And Earl says, thank you for the vouch. Earl, I will ship out those 3 beautiful cards to you on Monday. Okay. Shawn, recently it was announced, I saw it in a press release, or if you just announced it in the Facebook group, that you took on a role. And now you are a businessman, you have a company, you work full time, but you've taken on sort of a side hustle, if you will, or a secondary gig with Classic Auctions as an acquisitions associate. How did you get involved with them?
Well, Marc Giteau, started Classic Auctions in 1994, and they're operating out of Delson, Quebec, a suburb of Montreal. And we've been friends even predating that, about 28 years back when I first started going to Toronto to shows and going to hobby stores on Yonge Street in Toronto and whatnot when I'd make trips down east. So we have a very long-standing friendship through the hobby. He has created a phenomenal business in Classic Auctions. I mean, they've certainly become the absolute global leader in liquidating hockey memorabilia and the estates of famous people. I mean, they've handled Maurice Richard's collection, Jean Beliveau, Bobby Hall, Howie Morenz, Guy Lafleur, and so many other, Class A Hall of Famers. Their resume is second to none in terms of hockey memorabilia. So, Mark and I go back a long ways, and over the years, I've helped a lot. I've always done some acquisitions, try and send things to him and get people to go to his auction house. And I've helped him a lot with authenticating Gretzky's stuff, especially autographs and whatnot. But now that I've gotten into cards, that's an area that Classic does as well. But they're wanting to get a much bigger piece of that market. You know, in terms of a business strategy and business growth, it's a great market to be in. Why wouldn't they? But they kind of need a segue into that. And because, you know, I've gotten in there now, I've jumped in really deep. I've got a long-term relationship with Mark and with people in the hobby. It was just a bit of a natural fit that I would go in and try and lend some of those contacts and that experience with bringing some more of the card market into the organization. So I think that's one of our biggest approaches, is to grow that market and make Classic, you know, the trusted source for vintage cards, just like they are for regular hockey memorabilia. So, you know, that's kind of where we come to put our heads together. You know, they're big. They've been around a long time. They've done over $100 million in sales over the years.
Wow.
That's a pretty big number. They auction off over 4,000 lots annually through 3 very, very, very nice auctions.
So is it 3 auctions per year? Is that how many that Classic does?
Typically 3 per year, yeah. And they each have 13, 14, 1,500 lots.
Well, that's a pretty manageable amount. So it's not, you know, I noticed with some of the auction houses, you know, even like with in cards like PWCC on eBay, they run like 12 or 13 auctions a year. Maybe it's 11, but they run an auction every month. And as a collector, it can get, you know, it's awesome to see all these cards, but it can sure get expensive if you're buying these things on the regular. So that sounds a bit more manageable to me. With your association or your role now with them, you know, you mentioned it's part of the strategy. What is the long-term goal for Classic? Is it to just keep on going at the same pace with 3 auctions a year, or any plans to maybe increase that, or any plans to I noticed on the website I just had up, there was basically speaking directly to US buyers, you know, we will deal with you. Anything else of sort of about the long-term growth strategy that you've discussed with Mark Juteau, the founder and owner, that you plan to be a part of moving forward with the company?
Well, for now, it's definitely to go out and get a piece of a bigger piece of the hockey card and the vintage card market. So that's key. I think with them maintaining the stronghold they have in the memorabilia world, that's going to that's a freight train that's moving. I don't think there's anything to worry about there. Obviously, they always look for growth opportunities in that as well, and will. In terms of whether or not they added a 4th auction, I mean, that's yet to be seen. It would obviously depend on growth, demand, and where the card market goes as well, right? That's all going to play a factor. Who knows? I mean, I'm not speaking for Mark by any stretch of the imagination, but you could find yourself in a situation where you're running memorabilia auctions and card auctions as separate entities, 3 of each a year. You don't know. So you kind of gotta grow that and see where it goes, at which rate it grows, and make those calls as you go. But the mandate is to definitely to get and grow the vintage card market, because it's so strong, and it's growing. It's growing. I think the collector base is growing. I think the serious collector base is growing, and it's a great place to be, and it's good market.
I would think that, it's great strategy by Mark to bring you on, simply because of your stature in the hobby, memorabilia especially, and you must have some amazing connections. Was that a part of the strategy for him bringing you on? Was really your reach within it, and even the notoriety you have had as a collector? Does that kind of give you access to more collections? It seems like he's had success dealing with players and estates in getting these collections and being able to be the one to offer them. Are you going to be able to sort of expand on that and bring even more?
Yeah, 100%. It goes back to what I said earlier, what I told myself in college: you can never shake too many hands. So the bigger you grow your network, the more opportunities you're going to have in the growth, right? So if he can bring in someone like me who does have a lot of great contacts and knows some people and have relationships with people, that can't hurt him. If I can bring in a couple of collections a year or a couple of collections in auction or whatever, that's where you want to be. That's growth. So it's about surrounding yourself and building a team where everybody has something to offer. And I guess, he saw that I had something to offer, and we put it together. And he knows that I'm very vocal in the community. I'm very public. I've always been extremely public with my collection, and that was a strategy too, a very important strategy, because some people are very private. I elected to be very public from the get-go. It was a conscious decision. And I'm very vocal on social media, on all the platforms. So he wants me to, to get on there and promote through those mediums, through my contacts on there. But when you're, to touch on the public piece, the more public you are, the more people know about you, so that when they want to liquidate, your name comes up.
Yeah.
Because the number of people that have reached out to me from all, reaches of the globe, because they said, I heard you're the guy, or I Googled and your name come up. Can you help me do this? Or can you help me sell this or do that? That's how I got a lot of the pieces in my collection. I kept making sure that my collection, my new acquisitions, every time I got something, I celebrated it publicly, because then people knew my collection was growing. I was going to be the go-to guy. And that's what kept the doors opening, was letting people know that I wanted stuff.
Yeah, no, great strategy. I agree. The more known you are, the more opportunities you're going to have to add to your collection, or even better, find something that someone else is looking for and make that connection. That happens almost on the daily. So great strategy. I do agree. The downside though is if people know you're chasing something specific, it's been known people can hold things hostage on you too if you're out there buying, right? It's like if you're I'm looking for this one of one card, if somebody sees it, they could acquire it and then say, hey, you want it, you're gonna have to pay. So has that ever happened to you where it's kind of backfired?
All the time.
Yeah,
that happens a lot. So you just have to go in. You either have to be willing to go in and hold your cards close, or just go in and throw it down on the table. It's either you're in or you're out. But most of the time I want something bad enough that if I want it bad enough, I'm getting it. I'm finding a way to get it, is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Whether it's overspend, whatever. But if I say no, it's just too much, it's just too much, and my mind is made up, it has to come down a little.
Well, it's funny. As I mentioned a couple times on my episode with Chris McGill on Wednesday, I've overpaid for things in the past, and I've never overpaid for something and then not basically had it double in value within a few years. So overpaying in this hobby is not a bad strategy. If you're buying, and I'm not talking about, a Crosby Young Gun where it's a high volume card. I'm talking about more rare items. You can kind of be comfortable overpaying for something here or there if it's something that doesn't come up a lot. A lot of people always want to know what the most recent comp was on a card. Well, if we only pay the most recent comps, prices won't change. The fact of the matter is prices change. They do go up because people like you, like myself, are willing to pay more than the last comp in order to get something that we highly covet. So you've mentioned it quite a few times tonight that you do look forward to going to the shows and shaking a lot of hands. So dare I say you will be bumping elbows in the future, but hopefully the networks will continue to grow. And everybody watching, I really urge you to come join us at these shows. If you're not already, come. It's worth the trip to come to the expo in Toronto if you can make it. It's worth the trip to come to the Summit show in Edmonton. And it's definitely worth the trip to go to the National, whether it's in Chicago or Cleveland. I don't necessarily recommend the Atlantic City version, but the Chicago and Cleveland versions are both amazing, amazing experiences, huge facilities. It's basically like the Disneyland of cards and memorabilia for 5 days. All right, man. Jason does say, Banff, Alberta, hockey card barbecue. Let's make it happen. All cook. Jason is a chef at a very nice restaurant in Banff, Alberta. So one day, Jay, one day we will have to do something like that. Okay, so we've talked about kind of growing the hobby and growing the collections. Let's talk about winding down the hobby and the collection, because I think it's important for people watching, especially if you're coming up to middle age, you're past middle age, you have an extensive collection. Shawn has alluded to this when we were talking about the fires, that he took what was worth money, because that's what's going to be important to his estate once he's gone. What can you advise people watching, Shawn, that may have a collection that is, worth some significant money to them, in terms of how do you deal with that from a succession standpoint upon your ultimate demise?
Well, typically when you're a collector, and I think a lot of us can attest to this, in your household, you're the only one who knows what you have. And in a lot of cases, that's because you don't want your wife to know what you have. But the point is, you end up having an awful lot of assets tied up and things like that in memorabilia and cards. And truly, at the end of the day, your wife and kids know you have a lot of stuff. They don't know where you got it. They don't know what you paid in a lot of cases. They definitely don't know what to do if, heaven forbid, you're hit by a bus or you pass away. So my opinion is, if you're not organized and haven't made a plan for that, you're really doing your family a disservice. Because you could have $1 million worth of cards in boxes, and that's all it is to them, is a box of cards. They don't know that you secretly spend a good stash of money on it, or maybe not secretly, but they don't know probably what you've spent on it or what it's worth today. So when something happens, they look at it, they go to your hobby room and they see these boxes of stuff. They don't know what to do with it. So they have a garage sale, and Jeremy is out on his Saturday morning and he looks at it and his eyes bulge, and he pays his $38 for the box of cards and sells them for $200,000. That's what happens. So I firmly believe that every collector needs to have an active inventory of what they own. Every time, we kind of alluded to earlier about mail day, the minute I do a deal, I have a spreadsheet, and there's lots of tabs in the spreadsheet with my sets. But the bottom line is every single line in there represents a transaction with the item, the card number, the PSA number, the date I bought it, who I bought it from, how much I paid, whether it was Canadian or US dollars, the date I bought it, and I keep a receipt from the transaction in a file. And I keep a letter with it, as weird as it may sound. I keep instructions. There's a letter on my desk, an open in case of letter, that really does leave specific instructions of what my family is to do with this, aside from what I've earmarked for them for personal reasons, what to do with the stuff so that they don't give in to the vultures, because the vultures hover. So it's very, very important that somebody knows what to do with what you have when something happens to you, if something happens to you, because it really could be seeing a big piece of your family's net worth go down the drain. And that's really not a fair situation. Yeah. So I think it's very important to know what you have, and that somebody else can know what you have and how to deal with it. Now, me personally, while I've owned some of the best Gretzky stuff in the world, there's no doubt about it. I could write a book alone just on listing the stuff that's crossed my desk. I've had 400 of his sticks. So, there's a lot of stuff, 400. That's a serious collection. So really the big takeaway here that you want to share with people that I'm understanding is document what you have and make sure that somebody that you know and trust, your wife, your parent, your sibling, your child, knows where to find this list, where these items are located. And I would also recommend, Shawn, if you tell me what you think of this, but also leaving, and you did refer to having instructions, but leaving then a name or two of people that you trust in the hobby that will help your family dispose of these, convert them to cash for your family so that they can use that on their day-to-day in their day-to-day lives as time goes on after you pass away. Great advice. Yeah, my name, I know my name is in friends letters that are collectors, and I know Mark Jiteau from Classic Auctions. I'm not lying to you. Years ago, that's whose name I put in my letter, and it's still in the letter today. Because I trust him. I know he has the capabilities to liquidate it and get my family the maximum return.
Yeah, really smart advice. I've done that myself. I've got somebody named to take care of it. And then if they're no longer around, I've got this guy first, this guy second, this guy third, because you never know who else is going to be hit by that proverbial bus at any given time. So really good advice to all collectors out there. We're going to address a few comments. Austin says, I've been to the Expo in Toronto once with my brother. Best trip I've ever had by far. Another vote for getting out there bumping elbows with other collectors, building that network. I mean, the networking is what really allows me to bring on the caliber of guests that I've brought on to this show. Again, if you tuned in late, this is episode number 25 of Sports Cards Live. I've had a guest on every episode except for the first one where it was just me sitting there. So please go, if you haven't yet, please check out the YouTube channel, Sports Cards Live. Please subscribe if you'll consider that. I really do appreciate it. And it's an honor to have Shawn as my guest for episode 25. The viewership has been amazing tonight, Shawn, thanks to you. So I do appreciate that a ton. It's a ton of fun to do this. It's a ton of fun and it's a privilege to be able to present these awesome guests to the hobby and to all the subscribers and viewers on both YouTube and Facebook. Jason says, got to make it to the show in Toronto. Got to make it to the show in Toronto next time. Jason, yes, you do. Make sure you come by, say hi, and introduce yourself. This must be a relative. Spencer Chalk says, cool show. That looks like the some fires, some Fort McMurray fires there in his YouTube icon there. Rich Barone says, Jersey, being Atlantic City, is the best expo. The dealers gamble and lose, so the buyers win. Yes, I haven't lasted till Sunday at that show ever to really be able to be a vulture for all these dealers who lost money and need to recover before they get home. Yeah, Scott says 400 in terms of sticks that you've owned. Yeah, that is definitely a wow. Hope Shawn comes back for episode 99. There's an idea. You know, I really missed the boat on episode 23. I had Chris McGill on my last episode, which is 24. He has a YouTube channel called House of Jordans, real analytical, real great show. One of my favorite channels out there. Check it out. I wish I thought of having him on for 23, but lesson learned. Shawn, we will have you back for episode number 99. Joe Sakic 19XX said, Alex says, this show has made me want to spend all of my money, but I don't have any. LOL. Yeah. Hey, we all want to spend all our money on cards. That's what brings us all. That's what we all have in common. We love cards. I said it a couple shows ago. I'll say it again. This show is called Sports Cards Live because I love sports cards and we are live. All right. I think we can wrap up, man. I mean, this has been a ton of fun, some amazing information, some great advice. I feel like we covered everything that we wanted to. Any parting words, any final comments, Shawn?
No, I've had an absolute awesome time. It was a lot of fun to do the show. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I really appreciate all the comments. He's been flashing my Instagram and Twitter handles up there. Anybody can email me anytime, hockeyman99@me.com. I'll be happy to answer questions and help out with your memorabilia. For me, ultimately, at the end of the day, it is about the network and it is about the enjoyment and growing the hobby. But by all means, don't hesitate to reach out with your questions. I usually respond within half a day. So sometimes it gets a little out of control, but I'm pretty prompt. So send them in.
That's very generous of you, Shawn. Thank you so much on behalf of all the viewers, myself, the hobby. I mean, I just can't say enough about that. That's an amazing offer. So guys, if you ever want to get a hold of Shawn or you just want to see what he's up to, on the ticker down there right now, I am Hockeyman99. That's Twitter and Instagram. And following it is the website for Classic. It's classicauctions.net. Please note the .net versus a .com. Very important. So be sure to check out classicauctions.com. I will mention this show myself. We are not sponsored, but I say to all my guests, I'm willing to promote whatever it is you're involved in. I don't really care what you're involved in. If you're my guest, I'm willing to promote whatever it is that you want to promote because, hey, there's no rules. I don't follow any rules for this show except the ones I make myself, and that's one of them. All right. Austin wants to say, I had a great night, guys. Thanks for your time, Shawn. Yeah, no doubt about it. Jay says, what a great show. Thanks, Jeremy and Shawn, for the entertaining couple hours. Wish it could go all night. And he went and followed you on Instagram. So there you go. All right. Final message. We have some great episodes coming up this week. On Wednesday, Adam G, the Real 27 guy. If you guys like true collectors, you're going to want to tune in on Wednesday for Adam. This guy, I just love this guy. He does some amazing posts on Instagram. He does these countdowns. Come listen to Adam with me on Wednesday. Then the next Saturday, week today, Chris Barr, product manager for basketball for Panini. That's going to be amazing for all you basketball guys out there, and even the non-basketball guys. Chris used to work for Upper Deck. He's a longtime collector. He goes by Vegas Puck Online. You may have heard of him. You may have seen him. Come check that out. We're going to learn a lot about basketball cards, modern basketball cards. And then the next Wednesday, this is another great one. We have Grant Sandground, the Director of Product Development at Upper Deck. Director. Really interesting. We're going to get some amazing insight from Grant. Jason, thanks, guys. Awesome show. Thank you, Jason, for viewing. Joe, might need to turn off the chat for that one. Yep, might need to just focus on some of these speakers instead. I agree. Anonymous Facebook user, awesome show, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Scott, he was great when they had hockey as well. Yes, Chris Barr of Panini is going to be an amazing guest as well. All right, Shawn, thank you so much for joining me on the 25th episode of Sports Cards Live, guys. We're going to keep this show going. Getting great feedback. Please keep tuning in. If you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. I greatly appreciate it. Good night. We will see you all on Wednesday.